tell people we could be over 200 by the end of the year. I don't see how Bitcoin doesn't get to 10 million plus per coin, even up to 20 million plus per coin. And it's on sale for 99% off. It's hilarious if you think about it. They literally just convinced us. The US government that controls the fiat money printer, and we know that the supply is unlimited. And we know that Bitcoin is the exact opposite of this. The dollar goes to zero against Bitcoin over time. Bitcoin is an ideology. It's my thesis. It fixes everything. We enter the second renaissance, and we enter the next golden age.
Today, I'm excited to welcome Jesse Tevelow to the podcast. Jesse is an entrepreneur, an investor, a Bitcoin enthusiast, is a 3-time best-selling author, and is pre-launching his new book, Life After Bitcoin. Welcome to the Bitcoin Edge, Jesse.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here, Paula. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's great to chat with you today. I really enjoyed your book. I learned a little bit more about you. But before we get to that, tell us about yourself before Bitcoin and how your life has changed since understanding Bitcoin in 2024.
Oh my gosh, you might have to cut me off if I ramble too long, but I call this my 10-year awakening. So it's actually the first part of my new book that's coming out. And it took me about 10 years to really settle into Bitcoin. And it was sort of a full circle journey. I was an entrepreneur for my whole adult life. I started my first company when I was 22, 23 years old, and been building companies and being on sort of the cutting edge of technology for the last 20 years. And I knew about Bitcoin really when the white paper came out. I was following a guy named Fred Wilson, who invested in Coinbase and was just very early in the space. And so I had heard about it. Didn't really end up reading the white paper until about 2013. My friends were getting involved in Bitcoin, and then the next year, Ethereum came out, and I have some friends who were in the actual ICO of Ethereum, so they were in like the pre-launch of Ethereum, if you can imagine that. So just way back in the day and early days of this entire industry. And I got sucked in with my entrepreneurial mind, and I was very excited. My first company was a game company, so we did millions of dollars in digital currency sales. And so I knew about digital currency, virtual currency. I knew there was a problem. There needed to be some kind of fixed supply or some way to track it back to actual real money. And that's what Bitcoin provided. So I kind of immediately understood that, got really excited. But then I got shiny object syndrome. And like any good entrepreneur, I had to explore all the other avenues. And so I saw, the altcoin explosion with the invention of the smart contract, Vitalik Buterin from Ethereum put that out. It really exploded the ecosystem, but it took my attention away from Bitcoin. I could argue with myself back and forth if that was a good thing or a bad thing, but I believe everything has a purpose and that life has its plan. I believe I'm a prime, I have to make my decisions, but when I look back, I can kind of connect the dots. And so I experimented with everything, NFTs, I launched my own tokens, I have my own projects and products, and I was at the ground level of everything in the industry. So I was behind the closed doors, I see what's happening, I was building the actual products, and it was a really unique insight. And eventually it brought me back to Bitcoin and realizing that Bitcoin is this protocol. It changes everything. And I would say that to finally answer your question, coming up to the election in 2024 was a big inflection point for me. I was seeing a lot of what had happened to me over the last 10 years. For example, I was debanked. I was part of Project Choke Point. Had a very difficult time as a founder trying to build in this space, and then seeing what was happening with the narratives, the false narratives in the media, the control of sort of content that was being passed down through the power structures. I was like, okay, this is bigger than this is like our entire lives, the way we experience life, like we're in the Matrix. And I had already felt that way back in 2015 with my first book, The Connection Algorithm. There's a lot of quotes in that book. It was my first book that are come from the Matrix. So I felt it back then. I called it Zombieland. It's in my first book in 2015. I talk about Zombieland. And that's basically this sort of prescribed reality that is put onto us by the media and these central sources. And right around the time of the election is when I said, okay, I just need to get into Bitcoin full force. And so that's finally, I'll land the plane there, as we say on X Spaces. That was sort of my big foray into Bitcoin. And now I'm just all in.
And that means that you really understand the altcoins and all the other protocols, and you still came to the conclusion that Bitcoin is the only way to go. What was the final straw for you?
Yeah, this is a saying that Bitcoiners have, that we all have to go through our journey and we all have to shitcoin before we Bitcoin. And it's just sort of like, a lot of these expressions are tongue in cheek and just sort of little inside jokes, but it just means that we all have to kind of go through whatever process we have, whatever sort of research, experimentation. Humans are curious creatures, and I believe entrepreneurs are what push the future. And to be an entrepreneur, you have to take risks, you have to take chances, you have to fiddle with things. But after enough study, right? It's still study because I'm studying in comparison to Bitcoin. I knew about Bitcoin, I was involved, but I was doing all these other things. And you just, after a certain amount of time, you realize that Bitcoin is a protocol and that altcoins are just a product that was built off of the protocol. It's literally just a little product that came off of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the layer. Bitcoin is the infrastructure. That's why my book's called Life After Bitcoin, because I believe there's a world before Bitcoin and there's a world after Bitcoin. And that's how intense it is. It's like a once in a species moment in time. And once you make that realization, that's why you say there's Bitcoin and then there's everything else. It's not even like Bitcoin should not be on a list with like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with other tokens. Bitcoin is a protocol. It's a once in a species invention and discovery that is going to change humanity forever. And then you have some coins that are built like a product on top of that. So hopefully that kind of puts it into perspective. They're not even in the same category, discussion, layer of importance. They're just little penny stocks. And I have those penny stocks. I launched these tokens. I launched NFTs. I'm just stating for you the reality that Bitcoin is the base layer for money, and it changes every aspect of human life. And then the altcoins are just little products and experiments. So that's how I see it.
And I read in your book that you went through a lot of pain to essentially find freedom. How do you handle that now?
Yes. Wow. You are really going with the heavy hitting questions right out of the gate. I love it. Bitcoin has shaped my entire life. I have never been a person to just sort of sit on my laurels and just wait. I really want to experiment. I'm curious. I thrive on momentum, creativity, and it's made my life difficult, honestly, because if you don't conform, you come up against a lot of resistance. And that's happened throughout my entire life, personal life, relationships, businesses, ideas and concepts that have gotten shut down. As I mentioned, I was part of Project Choke Point. So I was like too early trying to do this innovative stuff. And like the powers that be were pushing against me. That's how I'm always on that cutting edge, and it makes life hard. I've lost relationships with family members over my views of certain things, and Bitcoin's very misunderstood. Like that is a harsh reality. If you're like a true Bitcoin maxi or a true Bitcoiner at heart, you're going to come up against a lot of friction because it's so misunderstood, because it's such a big idea. It's hard for people to even wrap their head around just the tiny little tip of what it is. I say to people, you never stop learning about Bitcoin. I'm 10 years in, and the same people like Mallers and Saylor, and they'll tell you the same thing, because it's just such a big idea. You can never possibly learn everything there is to learn, and it's changing and it's developing at a rapid pace. So life's been hard. I've dealt with a lot of depression. I've dealt with a lot of friction just in general. And I'll tell you that the Bitcoin community is a special community. If you're like me and you come up against friction, please check out the Bitcoin community. And I'm happy to send you a note if you reach out to me on X. I'm pretty accessible there. But it's just the most beautiful example of humanity, in my opinion, is the energy that flows through the Bitcoin ecosystem. And that, I know you were talking about spirituality, but there's a spiritual element that sort of, I say, powers the network. And other folks in the Bitcoin Today crew and the thought leaders out there share my belief on this. Max Kaiser is one that comes to mind, which is that there's love. It's love money. Bitcoin is powered by love, fiat is powered by hate. And I will stand by that statement. Like, there's very real reasons why I'm saying that track back to actual math and gravity of why that is the case. But it is if you've done enough work studying Bitcoin, you realize it is a truth network, and it is love money, it is freedom money, it is permissionless, it is trustless, it cannot be debased, it cannot be taken over or controlled by any one single source. It is completely decentralized. It disintermediates banks and institutions and people that sit in the middle of our money, and it allows humans to get back to being humans and just sharing value back and forth across space and time. That's never been possible before on a global scale at a peer-to-peer granular level. So it's an insane technology. Sorry, I'm rambling again.
I love it. I love that you went straight to the spirituality. I want to get into that, and then we'll get into a little bit of macro. But since you brought it up, you wrote in your book that Bitcoin represents intentional living. It doesn't care about your status, race, beliefs, politics. Bitcoin heals itself and is a kind of spiritual renaissance rooted in responsibility, freedom, and truth. And this is shown in the Bitcoin community. It absolutely is. Not everybody can go right to the spiritual part of Bitcoin, but it does make many of us want to be better people.
Absolutely. Well said. And I can riff off of this one forever as well. Bitcoin is an ideology, and everyone comes to Bitcoin at a certain level. It can be a surface level. You can go another layer deeper. Again, Max Kaiser has 5 layers of Bitcoin understanding. Okay, so that's his mental model. But it's just really endless depths that you can go on Bitcoin. And I have no problem with where anyone is on that scale. But I get very deep with it because I've spent so much time with it that this is what inevitably happens. And I'll try to break it down for you quickly using some common terms that if you're in this Bitcoin space, you hear these terms. So the first thing to understand is fiat versus Bitcoin. Fiat is paper money. That's the sort of what the modern definition of fiat now is: paper money or coins. It's the money that's been issued to you by a government. And fiat just means by decree, literally meaning I just said, okay, this is my rule. We're going to use this little paper here because I said so. That's it. It sounds ridiculous, but that's it. That's fiat. It's by decree. Someone said so. So you use it. Use it to go buy things. You use it to pay. You got to pay your taxes in that currency, and we all just accept it. It's literally created out of thin air, and someone said you have to use it, and we agree, and so we do.
Well, the US government said.
It's hilarious if you think about it. They literally just convinced us for no reason, with no backing. Okay, that's fiat. Bitcoin is a fixed supply digital money, and so there's only 21 million units of Bitcoin. They're infinitely pretty much divisible up to 100 million, and so you have one SAT, which is a whole bunch of little pieces that make up one Bitcoin. And so just think of like pennies versus nickels, dimes, dollars. So you have sats, you have Bitcoin, but there's a fixed supply of this, okay? It's fixed. You cannot create more. On the fiat side, you have some random guy that just says, let's just make more, and they continue to inflate that supply, okay? And so what does this do? It means that the value of that paper becomes less and less and less and less. That's your purchasing power. So your purchasing power per dollar, per paper goes down. Whereas with a fixed supply, a la Bitcoin, that value still retains itself. That's why Bitcoiners say one Bitcoin is one Bitcoin, because we know it's always over the denominator of 21 million. And so it's always that exact mathematical result. So we know that unit, it's a unit of measure. And that's a really important property of money. It's having a unit of measure. With fiat world, we're constantly inflating the supply. And so the unit of measure becomes very blurry, and we don't know what does a dollar actually get you. That's why the cost of things is changing. It's not that the gas in the gas tank is any different. It's that the value, the purchasing power of the paper is going all over the place. And because there's more and more of it, it's going down over time, which means your gas, that same gas to fill up that same tank in your car, is now needs more of that paper. You need more of those papers to get it filled. So it's, what does that do? It makes you rush, makes you quick, makes you need to spend because you know it's going to be more expensive today or tomorrow than it is today. So you better use those dollars, right? And so again, long-winded answer, but getting back around to the question is, how does it change us? It changes us from a high time preference to low time preference. And so what that's talking about is our ability to think long-term versus short-term. Think about it. If the money is getting less and less valuable, you got to buy stuff. You got to buy now, buy now, buy now. So that makes your mind anxious. That makes your whole psychology and your mental state one that is hurried, one that is rushed, one that doesn't think logically, that doesn't think long term. What does that mean? It means you're focused on dopamine. You want little hits. Why is everyone so into altcoins? Because they want little hits. They're thinking about today, tomorrow. Can I 10x? Can I 100x? That's not going to get you anywhere in life. Let me just tell you from experience. Okay. You need to be able to think long term. And because Bitcoin, again, has a fixed supply, one Bitcoin is one Bitcoin, you know that it's over this denominator. As more and more money flows into the Bitcoin ecosystem, the value of the Bitcoin that you hold appreciates. So now you've got an asset that's actually, instead of the paper, right? You need more and more paper. You need less and less and less Bitcoin to buy more and more things, right? The price of a house in Bitcoin has gone down. So it's the opposite system. So now what is my mental state? Now my mental state is, I bet I could buy a home if I just hold on to this here Bitcoin. I just like put this in my pocket and hold it there. And it changes your whole mindset. And so when we start to talk about peeling back the layers of Bitcoin, you start to see what I'm saying now. It changes you. It changes your entire mindset, changes the way you think, the way you act. It changes the way you appreciate the world. It changes the way you see the world. This is not just some other stock, ladies and gentlemen. This is a protocol that changes the very fabric of humanity and the way the human mind is going to work moving forward. So chew on that.
Great answer. Why don't more people see it? You know, as I interrupted you and said the US government, because I think so many people trust the US government. And in a way, it's almost backed by the military too. Do you think that's reason why people don't see it?
Absolutely. There are many reasons why people can't see this. I'll just start with the simple reason, which is that what I've kind of been talking about. It's such a big thing. This is a paradigm shifting, once in a species technology. I mean, it took me 10 years to understand it, and even to the level now where I feel like I can talk about it like this. And I just told you, I still have plenty of learning to do. And that's why I go on X Spaces, not just to speak, but to listen to others and to keep learning. So think about that. It's hard. It's hard to understand this from just period. Okay. Now, on top of that, think about the incentives of the old archaic incumbent system to maintain its stance, to maintain its position. So now you've got something very hard to understand, and you've got another force that's trying to tell you the old story and not let you see the new story. Okay, so those two things together, I mean, that's your adoption curve of Bitcoin. That's why you see it going like this, because some people figure it out. And then, the media narrative tells you to get rid of it. Oh, no, it's wasting energy. Oh, no, it's only for, criminals. Oh, no, whatever the story is to get you to get out. Guess who comes back in the next time around? Bigger players, institutions, governments. Read between the lines. This is an asset. This is a protocol that's going to change everything. The old guard is trying to send you a narrative to kind of get you off balance, try to keep you in the fiat trap, keep you in the fiat mind, while they transfer over their old paper money into digital money, a la CBDCs, which is the Genesis Act, which gets into stable coins and the regulatory now sort of guidance on top of stable coins. Okay, so we can get into all that stuff, but it's the power structures. It's really just about these power structures, and that's what makes it difficult. I'll layer one other thing into the adoption curve, which is the human psyche. And we talk about this a lot on X Spaces, the Myers Briggs. sort of categorization of different types of minds. And you have intuitives and you have people that are, more introverted versus extroverted. You have the thinkers, and there's a few different types. I'm one of them. I think I'm INFJ, and it's one of you can like look up the data on this. There's like high correlations with these certain personality types and then Bitcoin adoption. And so that is the third piece of this, Paula, is like you have that predisposed like thing in your brain, like I do, that's curious, that wants to figure this thing out. And then you've got like 99% of the rest of the human population that just doesn't want to do that, right? They're complacent. There's a fight or flight control in our biology that tells us to stay and to be safe and not to go off and explore the edges. Some crazy people like me, for some reason, got wired weirdly, and we want to go explore the edges. And so that's why you see this adoption curve going the way it is. I believe that we'll see mass adoption continue, but there will be volatility over the years. I'm not one for predictions or timelines, but I see, I think in decades, honestly, and I have full conviction. I call it 99.999%. If we kill ourselves off, then this wouldn't work. But otherwise, if we make it, I don't see how Bitcoin doesn't get to 10 million plus per coin, even up to 20 million plus per coin. And you're talking about hundreds of trillions of dollars in market cap of Bitcoin at that point, but in US dollar terms. But, I think that that's a logical conclusion based on the technology.
Hey there. Don't forget to like and subscribe to help me grow the channel. Want to sleep easy? MICROSEED lets you stamp your seed phrase onto a small steel washer. Buy the device once and use it forever. I love it. It's discreet, precise, and easy to transport. Get yours below. For powerful self-custody with no backdoors, I recommend the TREZOR wallet. For peace of mind with collaborative custody, the Bitcoin Advisor is a trusted team who can also help with inheritance planning. Just scan the QR code or use the link below. And check out these super cool SATOSHOEs with over 40 styles to choose from, plus 10% off with my link below. Now, back to the show. Well, in the short term, with the macro headwinds that you mentioned, the Trump administration embracing Bitcoin and a lot of these new favorable laws, what do you see for the rest of the year?
You know, I, again, am not one for predictions, but I am probably one of the people in the industry that is just constantly bullish. I always have this happy outlook. And I know that there's going to be corrections and there's going to be downturns and we're going to get over our skis and it's going to come back. And I talk about this where the absolute value, so like money terms, like $10,000 swing, $20,000 swing, $50,000 swing, $100,000 swings. Is that possible? I think that's more than possible. But just think about the market cap of Bitcoin over the years continuing again to just double, triple, quadruple from, 2 trillion, 4, 8, 10, 20, 30, 50 trillion. And so now it's like those big absolute numbers, $100,000 swing is only a small percentage dip, right? Now you're talking about a few points of a percentage of a dip. So it's just all about understanding that we're early in the market. So it's like people say, do you care if you get it at 97K or 105K or 115K or 120K if it's going to be 10 million? I like to tell people it's 99% plus off right now. It's on sale for 99% off. You can take it. And if you can have the low time preference, again, back to that low time preference, thinking out, not tomorrow, not next week, not can I pay rent with this, but 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. I have a 5-year-old daughter, so I think in terms of her. But how much is this Bitcoin going to be worth when I give it to her? So if you can, whatever you do, if you have a child, if you have a goal, if you have, a point in the future, you want to buy a house by age, whatever, but put something out there and then think about Bitcoin from that long-term, low time preference perspective. That being said, I'll throw out the number. What are we at? 15. I tell people we could be over 200 by the end of the year. I still think that's more than possible. People would probably tell me that's crazy because that's almost a 2x from where we're sitting at, like just over 100. you'd be surprised how quickly this thing can move. And go back and look at the charts and look at the end of the year in Q4 and look what happens in November. And there's still a lot of time left in the year. It's still summertime. This is a typical lull. Okay, if you want to talk about macro and just sort of human behavior, and then you typically see things start to move, not just in Bitcoin, but in all the markets. Coming into fall, people go back to school, people start to kind of get more work minded, more business minded. So yeah, I think we have plenty of room to keep going up and to the right.
And we might have some possible rate cuts, and M2 money supply is at record highs globally, right?
Yeah, I don't follow too much of this sort of macroeconomics from the fiat perspective, but what I can tell you again from just the macro is that I'm always comfortable making this statement. We will continue to inflate the US dollar. We will continue to not know what's going on at the Fed. We will continue to have to just trust this blind system that we've been told by decree is what we have to go by. So I mean, just sort of again, just think about things in the context of Bitcoin and everything. You can see through the matrix and everything starts to have this pristine clarity. And I don't know what they're going to do. Nobody knows what they're going to do. That's part of the trick. That's part of the fiat trap, is they get to just do whatever they want. And the Fed is this magic private slash public slash government slash not government thing with some guys that do some stuff, and we just have to go with it. So we know that there is a single node, the US government, that controls the fiat money printer, and we know that the supply is unlimited, and we know that Bitcoin is the exact opposite of this. And so the dollar goes to zero against Bitcoin over time.
Yep. Great points. Do you think the 4-year cycle continues? I know you said there'll be ups and downs, but do you think that will continue?
I would say again, I don't pay attention too much to these things, and so I would leave it up to the chart gurus. But I tend to think that again, everything I do think is very macro. So it's like we're so early. It's like, who cares? Yeah, it's gonna go off trend. We're in year 16 of however many thousands of years Bitcoin is around for. So like we're trying to. I get it. Like our monkey brains want to pay attention to what's going on, but like who cares? Like it's so early on the adoption curve, and it's just going to keep on growing, and the incentives are there. I call it a risk mitigated once in a species opportunity at this moment, because I couldn't have told you with confidence that Bitcoin was going to quote unquote make it and see extreme adoption like 5 years ago, because there was so much regulatory. I mean, I was getting choked out as part of Project Choke Point. I mean, it was getting stamped out, and it just wasn't sure if it was going to happen. At this point, when you have people like, BlackRock, and you have governments, and you have the United States of America with the world reserve currency saying they're going to start doing stuff with Bitcoin, okay, this thing is not going away. It is risk mitigated. And love it or hate it, with people who are the pure Bitcoin maxis, they don't want institutions and they don't want governments to be doing anything with it. If you want Bitcoin to succeed, it has to get into that level of money, because that's where the bulk of the money is, and Bitcoin is new money. So logically, it has to go through that. But it's also permissionless and trustless. And so, we can keep it individual sovereignty, we can do it, but it's risk mitigated completely right now. So I think I completely went off tangent on your question there, but I don't really worry too much about the charts and the data that's coming out of the fiat world so much.
Yeah. And especially if you have that long term horizon,
Exactly.
it's great. And even if it corrects, then it doesn't matter long term.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we were talking about the 4-year cycle. Like eventually it's gonna decouple, I think, but who knows when.
Yeah. So, what is your Bitcoin philosophy?
My Bitcoin philosophy, I could probably sum up in the way I've been signing off on some of these shows lately and thinking about what I want to leave people with. And you might have heard me say this a few times, Paula. I say protect your time, protect your health, and protect your Bitcoin. And that kind of gives you a little, what is my philosophy? Well, that's it right there in a nutshell. Time is the only asset that we never get back. I've had very difficult moments in my life, as I'm sure many of the listeners have as well. We're all living our journey. We all, experience tremendous pain, and you just don't get time back. It's the one thing that is just moving forward. And, I think, Bitcoin is that in code, right? And so it's really interesting how Bitcoin mirrors these laws like time and gravity. The reason I say protect your health is because you can't enjoy your time if you don't have your health. So what is time if you don't have the ability to enjoy it? So, that's something that I just like to leave people with to think about. This is your meat sack, but it's your vessel. And so it's really important. And it also controls how your mind and your, infinite thought is able to process. So protect your time, protect your health. And then the last piece for me that's fallen into place, and I'm early 40s. I've done a few things. I've loved, I've lost, I have a child, I've, had success in business, I've had massive failures, I've met incredible people, powerful people, simple people. I've done a lot. And Bitcoin is just sitting right there in that top three for me because it's truth and it's value. And what is your time and your health if you don't feel like there's any value in what you're doing? And so those three things, your time and your health, and then Bitcoin, which allows you to create value and maintain it. That's all Bitcoin does. It is an optimized system for measuring and retaining value with no entropy. Just think about that. Think about how that changes the social construct. So that's my philosophy, Paula. Protect your time, protect your health, protect your Bitcoin.
I love it. How do you protect your Bitcoin? Are you a big self custody advocate? As we know, there are lots of ETFs, and that could be a first step for people. But how do you protect your Bitcoin?
I am very big on protect your Bitcoin. Protect your Bitcoin is at the ethos of the ideology of Bitcoin, which is with great power comes great responsibility. If we want the power as individuals to have individual self sovereignty, that means we have our own power, but it means we have the responsibility of controlling, maintaining, preserving that power. The only way to do that is through self custody. And Bitcoin is the only bearer asset that's ever existed that is not controlled by a human. And so it is the only bearer asset that is truly permissionless and trustless, available to all. You just have to know how to get it. Once you know how to get it, you can grab it, you can store it just like you would put it under your mattress, but it's in cyberspace, it's in your cyber mattress, and you just keep it. And that stops everything evil in the world. Literally, if you could just take the money, put it under your cyber mattress, then no one can get it. The governments can't get it. They can't do the wars. They can't mess with people. They can't just randomly make up rules about how money works because you have the money. You hold the money. It's in your mattress. It's not in their mattress. It's in yours. And so that's Bitcoin in a nutshell. That's the ideology. It's literally, you know, this Satoshi created this right when there was the bailout of the banks in 2008 crisis, because it was just like they're too big to fail. The banks control the money. The banks are the money. We'll just make sure that the banks don't go away. I mean, that is ludicrous that that's the system that we were in. And now Bitcoin is like, no, we can actually, I can do work. I can go do something. I can go create some art. I can go sell these things and I can get Bitcoin for it. And it's going to preserve itself. So it's just really important to understand how deep this thing goes. But again, Paula, I can talk about these things forever and go off on tangents, but I'll let you rein it back in.
I spoke to somebody last week who lost 7.4 Bitcoin, and he's been in it a while. It was a mistake downloading an app from the App Store. And, it happens. I've been thinking about how we all need to educate ourselves better on how to keep our Bitcoin safe. But like you mentioned, it's not too late for Bitcoin. You just have to build up again. Are there any suggestions you have?
Yeah, and let me just say something again back on the last topic there, because I think it's just important to understand again that we're so early in the industry. Like, it's just, think of it as like the early days of the internet. We're still figuring out web pages, we're still figuring out email, we're still figuring out how to do stuff. And so there's just going to be a lot of experimentation, and I think everybody needs to just accept that. If you're a consumer, accept that it's early, things are going to be clunky. If you are an entrepreneur, accept that it's going to be difficult, that the infrastructure is nascent. We're still trying to figure out use cases. The audience doesn't get it. I have this from first-hand experience when I was launching products. There's this retail community now that's involved, but they don't understand how business works. So you've got consumers that want things. They don't understand really. You've got entrepreneurs trying to build, but then there's regulators and that's confusing. And then the audience doesn't know what we're building. So just everybody like, just take a collective deep breath here. We've got this new thing called Bitcoin. It's incredible. And there's just two things is like one is self custody. So figure out how to do that. That's what I was just talking about. That's your under your mattress, your cyber mattress, and you've just got it. The rest is like, what is this new thing? Bitcoin. What is this new industry? There's going to be all kinds of products. There's going to be mining companies. There's going to be new wallets that come, digital wallets you can use. There's going to be games where you can earn Bitcoin. I'm from the gaming industry. There's going to be, new services and products. Right now, Sailor's creating a whole new suite of financial products that basically generate a quote unquote yield by having Bitcoin as an arbitrage against the US dollar. Those are a whole new suite of products that's like revolutionizing the whole financial industry, right? You've got Bitcoin miners that are being turned into heaters that are heating up homes that you can buy them as a product to earn Bitcoin and heat your home. You've got, you know, you've got mortgage companies where you can take out a mortgage with your Bitcoin holdings. It's starting to become a form of credit and collateral that you can use to leverage to get other things that you need right now in your life. I mean, these are all things that are just developing right now. Like they're changing daily. So if you're a consumer, just realize, there's some risk. Like whenever you work with any of these companies, you're working with Michael Saylor now, you're working with, some founder like me who's just coming up with stuff. We can make mistakes. So that's why you got to be careful. You got to have that responsibility. Hold on to your Bitcoin, maybe play with a little bit of it. If you want to mess around with some of these other products, you want to try to loan it out, you want to earn a yield, you want to, whatever you want to do. There's something called Geyser Fund where it's projects and you can support the projects just like Kickstarter, but with Bitcoin. Maybe you want to do that. Maybe you want to use some of your Bitcoin for that. Like just do your own thing, but realize that it's freedom money, it's love money, and with great power comes great responsibility. So make sure you learn how to hold your Bitcoin, keep it safe, and realize that we're early. And so there's going to be some bloodshed. You probably lose some coins. I've lost plenty of Bitcoin, let me tell you. I've lost more than I would like to share. It's part of the process. So we're all in it together.
Well, you have a great attitude. Is that part of your underlying belief to have a good attitude?
Oh gosh, you got some banger questions. Yes, I think attitude is so important and it's something I struggle with daily. And that is one of my biggest internal personal growth battles is to do the best I can to put in the work. So again, this is a Bitcoin ethos, proof of work. You got to get out of bed, you got to work. I'm not a person of just blind hope. I'm a person of faith at this point in my life. I believe hope is a beggar. Just hope. I hope something happens. Faith is a warrior. Faith is I have faith that I'm going to do this and I'm going to get up and I'm going to charge ahead and I'm going to fight this fight and I'm going to win. And that's my faith. So that's kind of how I try to think about my attitude is trying to have an attitude of faith and try to not get too caught up in hope because you can get really bogged down in that if you have expectations and things don't happen. I prefer faith that things are going to be hard, but the obstacle is the way, and you push through it. And I lose that battle quite often. So let me be real with everybody in the audience and people listening. Like that's, I think, part of being a human is knowing that we're in this imperfect system, and it's going to be imperfect and that's okay. And some days I have a hard time, putting that energy into something I'm doing. My second book's called Hustle and it's about momentum. And my personality type is that I can get really bogged down, I can get depressed, but then I can actually really go 20x or 100x what a normal human could do if I'm in the right headspace. So that tells you how important attitude is because it relates to your extremely directly to your ability to produce and to do the work. So I try my best, Paula, but nobody's perfect. And I would suggest that everybody really, I'm going to listen to this back myself and take my own advice to pay attention to my attitude.
As they say, hope is not a strategy, but I have to say, you seem to have an amazing attitude and 3 best-selling books, and you've just written another Bitcoin book that is amazing. I hope everybody goes out and buys it when you launch it. So you're obviously overcoming it, and it can be done. We all do it. I work on it too,
Amen to that.
but it takes an effort. We're in a very fiat-minded world.
That's true, and I'll tell you where I get a lot of my life force is with this exact what we're doing right here, connecting. It's why I'm constantly in the Bitcoin community trying to not just spout out information, but trying to give thought-provoking commentary and trying to connect and listen to other people. And, we're not meant to be independent beings. We're social beings. I believe that we're meant to be independently sovereign, meaning that we have our own human agency to live how we want to live. But we should be living together. And that's why I say infinite fragmentation is the true path to unity. And that fragmentation, I think, comes in little local groups and little communities where there's real passion and real relationships. So just appreciate you for making the space. And I love having these relationships grow. And that's part of why I love the Bitcoin community.
Yeah, me too. And you say that Bitcoin will never run out. Why do you say that?
So yeah, this is a misconception. I think that it's sort of like a myth that I like to bust. What you need to understand is that money is a social construct. It's just a way for us to share value back and forth. And having a fixed supply is actually necessary in order to have that stay intact because it means that the movement of money through the system is always the same. It's always the same amount of supply. What you need in a market is you need buyers and you need sellers. As long as you have buyers and sellers, it never ends because I buy, you sell, I buy, you sell, I buy, we sell. It just goes back and forth. That's what a market is. And people get that confused. Like, no, we don't need infinite units. We just need enough people buying and selling. That's why you have market makers. If you've heard the term market maker and people think it's like a bad word, it's not. You need market makers because you need a market in order for there to be value in the currency that's being exchanged. Think about it. If no one's going and buying my dollars, what good are my dollars? I can't buy anything with it, right? That's why people say Bitcoin needs to get to that unit of exchange place or a means of exchange. We're not there yet. And I agree with that. But, you have to understand that in these markets, it's just about the size of the market. So as Bitcoin grows, it will become a means of exchange. You're already starting to see it in pockets. It happens in Nigeria. It happens in El Salvador. There's circular communities right now in El Salvador that Max Kaiser's working on, and people like Murph, my friend Murph, is working on a circular community down there. They just use Bitcoin, and it's a market. They buy Bitcoin, they sell Bitcoin, and it goes back and forth, right? It just moves. Cyber hands, right? It's just all happening in cyberspace, but it's moving around. The ownership is changing. And so if you can think about it from that perspective, then realize Bitcoin's going to be mined for another 100 plus years. So there'll be more Bitcoin coming into the circulation for the next 100 years. And as long as the market continues to grow, which I'm certain it will, I have 99.99% conviction that this thing will continue to get adopted, then it doesn't matter. The Bitcoin never runs out. It just keeps moving between more hands. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And it's almost infinitely divisible.
That's another great point, right? So I've heard some of my friends on the X Spaces, I think, describe it as a pizza. You can like cut the pizza into infinite number of slices, right? It's the same amount of pizza, but like if everybody needed a slice of pizza in the world, theoretically, we could cut it so thin that everyone would get a little sliver of pizza and everyone would get a little piece of pizza, right? That's the idea, is so that it's infinite, right? Because something that's infinitely sliceable, divisible, right? Never runs out in that sense, right? Because you can always kind of like cut it in half, make it a little smaller. Just to be fair with the math, Bitcoin, it does have a finite amount of Satoshis, but it's Satoshi was a smart guy. I promise you. You can do your own research on that, but he's a very smart guy. And he chose 21 million for a reason. If you look up into the research, I'm just paraphrasing here, but he basically he chose 21 million because he backed it out to the actual economics, all the money that was in the world. What would it look like if Bitcoin took over X percentage of that market? I mean, he was thinking these things in the creation. That's how smart he was. He didn't just pluck that number out of thin air. It just so happened that that was an amount that seemed congruent with his projections on if this thing were to saturate and penetrate the market, how many sats would people need arguably to transact as a means of exchange and have a small enough divisible, decimal point to actually transact in terms that humans can relate to. Because it's all about just numbers at the end of the day. I could say 1 penny, I could say 100 pennies or a dollar, or I could say $100, or I could say $100 bill, or I could say $1 million. It's just like numbers, right? And denominations. So Bitcoin Satoshi thought about the number for the fixed supply. He thought about the division, the ability for it to be divided into smaller sats. And if you look up the price of a sat right now, I think is a fraction of a penny. So he's doing perfect. He's like right on track. Like sats are a little too small for humans to kind of understand. It's a fraction of a penny. That's the smallest division of Bitcoin right now. But as it grows, like Bitcoin, like 1 sat will start to equal 1 penny. And then 1 sat might equal 5 pennies or 5 cents or whatever. But it'll start to get to these numbers. And I believe, we'll see, I could be wrong, but I feel like it's in the lexicon. Like people say sats. I think that's going to be it. Like people have different predictions, but I think we'll be dealing in sats. Like give it 10 years, everyone's gonna be doing stuff in sats, and everyone's gonna know like, damn, if you have a Bitcoin, you're one of those rich people, But we'll be doing stuff in sats. We'll be buying sandwiches, for like 100 sats or 50 sats for a sandwich or whatever it ends up being.
Yeah, so start stacking sats now.
Yeah, these sats are gonna be usable, man. They already are, and they're just gonna continue to hold their value.
Yeah, and do you think by then we'll still have the US dollar and fiat currencies, or are you one of those people who believe we're going completely to the new protocol?
Well, this is another one of those things where I don't try to predict it, and what I do is I say, okay, over some time frame, this is what is likely to happen. I don't know what that time frame is. I have no idea. But what I believe is that yes, on some time frame, the US dollar will go away. 100%. Now, I don't know how long that will take. That could take hundreds of years. I mean, it could take a lot longer, but eventually people are going to be like, paper. I mean, just think about 200 years from now, how digital everything's going to be. And someone's trying to get out in their pocket a little sheet of paper that's torn. Like, come on, guys, come on. So, yes, it's going to go away. It's analog, it's old, it's going to die at some point. That being said, the entire human race, our entire species, runs on it right now. So, like, no, it's not just going to flip a switch, go away. No, we're, like humans, this is the entire human race getting onto a new thing. It's going to take a while. Now, what you're seeing right now is the very early stages of the powers that be, the current power structure, the nation states, the United States, Russia, whoever, and they're saying, okay, this is happening. The paper's going to go away. The digital stuff's going to be the way we do things. How can we make a bridge? And that's what stablecoins are. Literally, I say that all the time. Whenever we're talking about stablecoins, just a bridge. It is a bridge from the paper to this digital version of the paper. So there's a lot we could talk about on that, maybe on another show, Paula, but it's just a bridge, and Bitcoin is better money. There's no question. It's not 10x better, it's 100,000x better. So it's just a matter of time. I don't know what that timeline is, but we'll get there.
Yeah, but you're right. People are slow to change.
Yes.
I'm originally from Zimbabwe, and my mom still has an analog phone, and she has a cell phone too, but they still have analog there. So in some places, it takes a long time to change.
Yep, humans and mammals in general, biological beings we're trained to be slow. We're trained to be scared. It's a survival function.
Yeah, true. You mentioned in your book that fiat has corrupted education. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. So I make the argument that fiat has corrupted everything. And then you want to take it a layer deeper than that. It's the inflationary aspect of the fiat system that is the central evil that has caused everything to crumble. And I can track it back to the fact that money is a social construct. And so if you believe that that is true, then if you break a social construct to this degree, the entire social system breaks down, which is exactly what happened. And that's why I argue, first in 1913 when the Fed was introduced, and then again in 1971 when we went off the gold standard and started just printing money like it was, I mean, literally like it was our job. That's what we did. That our job was to print money, and we did. And you can see I have a number of graphs in my book, and it's all from Most of the content is from the site WTF happened in 1971.com. So I highly recommend people check it out. It is fascinating. I found it through Jack Mallers because Jack used a lot of the data in his presentation. I said, oh my gosh, what is this data? I have to get it. Went over to WTF happened in 1971.com. Love the URL, by the way. And it's just amazing. And I don't even know who it is. It's this guy or gal or someone who puts this stuff up, and the data is shocking because it shows you how, as we print money, the purchasing power goes away, everything is screwed up. Everything. So it's like, just think about it. Your money in your wallet, you went and did a job, you worked, you're just a regular person. Now you have money, and now that money is getting less and less valuable. Like, you already did the work, but like, you can't buy stuff with it because like every day it gets less. So you can't buy the bread, you can't get the gas for your car, you can't live, you can't get to your job, you can't get to your job, you can't work, you can't make the money. If you're not making the money, you can't buy the house. If you can't buy the house, it's hard to have a kid or think about being married. If you have all these problems and you're trying to do it and then it's hard, what happens? Divorce. Okay, then what happens? People don't have the money, incarceration, families fall apart, child, care gets messed up. Like, just so you see what I'm saying? It's a cataclysmic avalanche effect that happens, and it's just from that single thing, that central piece of inflating the money. Because we're real people out here. Like, we're real people spending real time and real energy doing real work so we can make the money, and the money is supposed to allow us to do things. That's how it's supposed to work, but it doesn't work that way. So it's really like crazy how I'll tie it back to the education system now, where you have these misaligned incentives where the fiat money, when it's being printed and given to the institutions that continue to create that power. So it's a proof of stake model, not a proof of work model. Nobody in the room with the printer needs to do any work. They don't need to do anything. They just make more money, and then they give it to the people that help them. Well, who helps them? The education community. Let's teach everybody what we want them to know. Let's not teach them about how banks actually work. Let's teach them about how amazing our history is and how everything is wonderful. Let's teach them all the things. Let's teach them that they should be compliant and do 9-to-5s. Why? So that they can keep this infrastructure going, so we can print more money, make ourselves rich, go fund forever wars, do whatever we need to do, and we'll have compliant citizens that don't ask questions, that don't know anything about money, that don't know anything about inflation, and we'll become rich. And there's a power source at the top, and our founding fathers talked about this. There's lots of quotes from Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton. I've been pulling them up recently, and they knew this. They knew that once you get power controlled by these central sources in the United States, it became the banks, the banking system. And that was sort of the beginning, was the Fed, and that was JP Morgan and a bunch of, a small group of rich dudes that said, hey, we'll just control the finances of this whole thing. We're just going to control it. And they just made a deal with the government to quietly act in these ways that would get them around all the regulation, and they would just literally make the money up. So a lot of the money would go out to banks, financial institutions, media properties, religious groups, whatever the narratives were, whatever the places of communication were, that's where the money could go. And this is called the Cantillon effect. It's actually got a name, where the money goes closest to the printer sources in that power structure before it reaches the actual citizens of a society. So, there's a lot of data that shows, Paula, around the education space, how there's just been a lot of pedantic, sort of incorrect and sort of bad information taught in school, right? A lot of it about conformity, a lot of it just brushing over things like politics and finance, that clearly the world is waking up to the fact that we should know about these things, especially if it's the control mechanism for our entire lives in the form of fiat and fiat engineering. So, the education industry, just like everything else, is coming up against this force called Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is truth. Bitcoin only has truth. It doesn't care about your opinion. It doesn't care about your ego. It doesn't care what power structure is in place. It's just going to reveal the truth. And you can see it now in the education system, and you can see people like me and other trailblazers and thought leaders that are like, look, we've had enough of this. I went to college, it's great. There's a lot of good things about college. Go blue. I went to Michigan, is great. But the systems are changing, and there's free flow information, and there's a truth money called Bitcoin that allows true value transfer. So we don't need a hidden dark uh, shadow government messing with our money. Like, we can handle it ourselves now on a peer-to-peer basis, all the way from the micro all the way up to the macro. And we've got this problem with federal control now, where everything is federal, everything is top down. And I believe we need to flip it. We need to flip it on its head. Infinite fragmentation for full ultimate unity, and we need to just use the Bitcoin rails. And so I think we'll see a resurgence of education. I think it's going to get a lot better. But all these institutions, stuff's coming out, you know about Harvard or about whatever school is doing the latest thing to kind of just prop themselves up and have whatever narrative is being told to them that they need to teach, right? So I'm all for like free education, and I think Bitcoin really pushes that.
Yeah. Bitcoin fixes a lot of these problems we have.
Everything. It's my thesis. It fixes everything. And, if we haven't talked about AI, but like my thesis is basically with the marriage of AI and Bitcoin, if we get that right, we have Bitcoin as the value layer, and it's got the structure, it's the math, it's slow, it's deliberate. And we allow the AI to run on that. We enter the second renaissance, and we enter the next golden age, and it's hopefully hundreds or even thousands of years of prosperity, to where we can break down these power structures and go back to like local, more community driven things where people can come in and out. It's interoperable. You can join whatever community you want. You can join a community on Mars. You can join a community flying around in space. You can join a community that's just virtual. You can join a community that's in Hawaii, and you can use money that goes in and out of all of those, and it's the same money. And no government is saying taxes are this, or the rates are now this or that, or we changed whatever. Like, that just is gone. They're just out of our pockets. They're out of our wallets. And we can just go live our lives. And we just want peace. We just want love. We want to be with family. We want to create a family. We want to have some property. We want to do some things, have some memories. And fiat forces us on the hamster wheel. Bitcoin takes us off back to reality, touching grass, hanging out with people we love.
Yeah, we just want a money that holds its value and
That's it.
hopefully increases.
Well, everything, it's not that it's increasing, it's that the US dollar is going down. That's what you have to realize. The value appreciates of Bitcoin only because the dollar goes to zero against Bitcoin.
Yeah, very good point. Very good point. And just for our last question, how has Bitcoin changed you most?
Bitcoin has been the most life-changing factor in my entire life, which might sound a little crazy to some, but if you go down the rabbit hole deep enough, I'm sure you will not only relate to it, but you might actually feel the same way. It is a protocol that is built with code, but touches every aspect of your social, psychological, and emotional state. If you let it, it actually changes who you are from a core soul perspective. And so, Bitcoin has changed everything about my mindset. It's changed my direction in life. It's changed my goals in life. It changes how I think, how I act, the decisions I make, my behavior, my thought process, my ability to think ahead in the future and see trends. I've always been good at it, but Bitcoin has taken it to the next level for me. And I would say mostly it's brought love back into my life, and it's centered me around my daughter. And, I have this vision now for the future. I think about my daughter, and she's, going and doing research on Mars, and she's hanging out in different parts of the world on planet Earth. But we're at that place where we're starting to explore, and human race is doing well. And, we have little communities, and all this sort of ugliness has gone away. And that's a great way for me to live my life. So Bitcoin has changed me tremendously. And I'll close with saying that the community has been arguably the biggest way that Bitcoin has changed me. Is the people around me have changed. And if you want to change as a person, just level up the people that you're around. Bitcoin has done that for me, and I'm so grateful to be around other Bitcoiners. It just fuels me up.
Wow, that's beautiful. Beautiful, hopeful world. And I just going to give a shout out to Bitcoin Today because they're a beautiful community on X. I know there's many great communities on X. And thank you so much for joining me today. Tell us where people can find you.
First of all, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I know you put in a lot of work, proof of work for you on this. So kudos to you. Hope we get to do it again. This was wonderful. You're a tremendous interviewer, very thoughtful. Thanks for reading the book. I mean, that is just like icing on the cake for me. I'm glad that you found it enjoyable and can't wait to continue our relationship. So thank you for that. Pretty easy for people to find me. I'm on X. That is sort of my home in the digital world, and it's just you can look up my name in the search bar, or I'm at J Tevelow, and turn on your notifications. I'm posting all the time. I'm speaking all the time on stages, and I truly enjoy just trying to give people some value, some perspective, and try to add a little bit of positivity to their lives.
Thank you.